we have in the studio with us the Montrealers for 9/11 Truth. I was wondering if you'd like to stay on the phone as we talk with them and find out what they're all about. Stay on.
Yeah, that sounds great.
All right, great. So we'll keep you on the air. So with me in studio, joining me in studio are two gentlemen from an organization called Montrealers for 9/11 Truth. They're organizing a rally or a march calling for reopening the books on the events of September 11th, 2001, events that occurred 8 years ago this week. Welcome to the Tuesday morning after, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us.
And would you be willing to introduce yourselves?
My name's Sam.
My name is Michael Penguay.
And your organization is Montrealers for 9/11 Truth?
Yes, exactly. Montreal for
9/11 Truth.
Montreal Truth, exactly. Or our website, mtl911truth.org, and also another one, Montreal911truth.org also.
And what event is coming up?
When's it coming?
What exactly is the event? Did I garble it? Is it a march? Is it a protest? Is it a parade? What's happening?
It's a rally.
Okay.
We don't have a permit for a march, so we're having rallies all weekend. Mm-hmm. Fridays will be starting at noon at Phillips Square, right across from the bay on St. Catharines. Saturdays will be in the Old Port, and then moving to a big anti-vaccination conference that is taking place at the Palais des Congrès.
Exactly.
And Sundays will be at Tam Tams at Mount Royal Park.
Okay. So why is it that you believe that what do you think is the truth of 9/11?
Well, from my observation, I got into this in 2004. My first actually conference was in 2004 in Toronto, when I met some really informative people like Dr. Paul Bowman, who was the head of the Star Wars program in the United States. And after my reading on this issue, for me it's clearly obvious that there were rogue elements within the United States government and other agencies from other foreign governments that were involved in 9/11. Pinpointing the exact people is kind of difficult, but we can suspect certain characters. But it's impossible that these 19 Arabs in caves could have orchestrated outmaneuvering the most sophisticated military that man has ever known. It's quite unbelievable, the official story. So.
Besides that, it's quite obvious that the buildings. First of all, there were 3 buildings that collapsed that day. Most people don't know about Building 7, which also collapsed at 5:20 in the afternoon on 9/11. If you look at the video, it's quite obvious it was a controlled demolition. It did not collapse naturally. On top of that, you have the victims' family members who have just dozens and dozens of questions from the original 9/11 Commission that were not answered. They would still like answers to. The chairman of the 9/11 Commission themselves have admitted that the commission was set up to fail. It was stonewalled by the CIA. And on top of that, we have the work of Richard Gage, who is the head of architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth. He's got over 800 certified architects and engineers on board with him, saying that there was controlled demolition of the 3 towers. And there's been a newly released study just a few months ago where they actually discovered a very advanced unexploded It's called nanothermite. Mm-hmm. It's a military grade explosive, and they found lots of unexploded particles of it. Doing an analysis of the dust from the World Trade Center disaster, mm-hmm. So they actually have found the explosive that was used, and now we're just trying to get the word out on these issues.
Who are the ones who found the nanothermite?
It was Dr.
Niels Harrit
and his searchers, which included Dr. Stephen Jones from the United States, Kevin Ryan, who worked for Underwriters Laboratories,
and maybe 6 or 7 other scientists as well who were involved with the paper.
Okay, so one of the pieces of evidence that you mentioned was the collapse of World Trade Center 7, Building 7, which I believe occurred at like 5 o'clock. So the first 2 towers fell in the morning and around 10 o'clock in the morning. And that's also the first time that any building has collapsed after being hit by an airplane or also a building has totally been destroyed.
Steel framed building, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The steel framed buildings are not normally susceptible to fire. Steel is just too strong to be weakened substantially by fire, regardless of gasoline, jet fuel, office furniture, whatever is the source of the fire. Mm-hmm. 3 steel-framed skyscrapers collapsed.
And, 2 at 10 o'clock and then the other at 5 p.m. And also the BBC was filming it, and they announced it before it happened.
That's right. What was her name? Jane.
I can't recall her name.
Jane Stanley or something like that. Reporter from the BBC reported at 5 o'clock that Building 7 had already collapsed, and in fact, you can see her. You can go on YouTube and watch it. You can see her in New York, and Building 7 is right behind her as she's reporting that it's collapsed. In fact, it didn't collapse for another 20 minutes. So were they on a script? Who knows? But it's pretty suspicious.
Another anomalous event from
one
that
of
day.
many.
So, who do you think benefited from this crime? That's one way of, an old trick of detectives is to ask the question, K bono.
Cui bono, yeah.
So, who do you think benefited?
Well, if you look at the weapons manufacturers, the oil companies,
The U.S. government itself.
US
I mean, they
government
got a whole bunch of new rights
Israel.
through things like the Patriot Act.
Mm-hmm.
The arms manufacturers with 2 new wars, aggressive wars in Afghanistan and Iraq.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like there's a lot of very powerful interests in the United States.
It seems like it. We don't want to point any fingers. We're just saying it. There needs to be a new investigation because there's so many questions that need to be answered. We don't have all the answers. We don't know exactly who was responsible for this, but it's obvious that somebody was responsible for the controlled demolition of these towers, and that's what we need, a real investigation with subpoena power to investigate.
If I could add that too, that why I think 9/11 is also very important. I get some people arguing with me on the street saying, "Well, come on, it's 8 years ago. Why you guys are going on this issue?" Some attack it, saying, "Well, Mike, you just attack it. It's capitalism. It's if we try to maybe eradicate capitalism or try to regulate it, we'll solve the issue." Well, I dispute that because just like Hitler's successor Hermann Göring says, it's easy before he was killed there at Nuremberg trials. He said, well, it's easy to get people behind a war agenda, whether it's a parliamentary democracy, a dictatorial communist regime. Just tell the people that are being attacked, denounce the peacemakers, and he got them behind a war agenda. So I say, regardless what kind of system we're living under, if it's our current system, it's communism, libertarianism, there's always going to be elements within a society who are going to orchestrate some sort of false flag terrorist attack, a false flag, in order to undermine peace within the society and create factions. Divide and conquer has always been there. So if people don't understand the history of false flag terrorism, and 9/11 is a great example for people to understand the extent of the criminality. And if we teach people, look at this as a classic example, I think young kids will eventually have to learn this from elementary school, how politics works, throughout history. And I think that's when we could actually maybe have peace in the world eventually, when people understand the politics of power and how things operate.
If I could just say one more thing, is that as long as this goes uninvestigated, the risk for another false flag attack happening is still there. So we need to expose, like Mike said, how this works so that more false flag attacks do not occur.
Well, if indeed the claim is true that it's insiders who perpetrated 9/11, then we're in Afghanistan Canada itself is in Afghanistan under false pretenses.
That's correct. And actually, we have a petition in Canada right now that we are submitting to Parliament for a full investigation into the family members' claims, the questions they have unanswered, Richard Gage's claims of architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth, and also the nanothermite scientific paper, basically saying that we need these to be investigated because it seems like our foreign policy in Afghanistan is misguided, and all these laws that have been passed in Canada, anti-terror laws since 9/11, seem to be misguided as well. So we want justification for these policies by answering these questions, and if you can't, if we find out that 9/11 was a lie, then these policies should be revoked.
I hear you big time. Yeah, it really gets my teeth grinding when the more I think about the fact that a criminal class is in control of the levers of power in our
and it's not all of government. It's just certain corrupt elements within the government. Not all government is bad. There are some good people within government.
Oh, for sure.
If I may just say one thing.
Sure, Frank Cam, you're coming through loud and clear this time. Please go ahead.
I'm just curious. I'm totally with you guys. I have similar views, but I have one question. What do you think should happen if you do find the people let's say the petitions go through and government says, "Oh shit, yeah, I guess you guys are right. These guys were responsible for this." And then what do you expect them to do, and what would you like them to do, and what do you think they're going to do? You know what I mean?